in the meantime, I can kind of give some updates on the latest in my world personally. I've been romping around since the last AMA, I believe. Spent some time in the last couple of months in Amsterdam. We did a hackathon there. I also got a chance to speak at an event with a whole bunch of mathematicians. I got to spend a little bit of time in London with some other folks on the Holochain team. Got to give an opening keynote at a conference called Alt Shift in Cairo, Egypt. That was really interesting. I'd never been to the Middle East or Africa before, so that was a wonderful experience. Thank you to the organizers there at Alt Shift. I spent a little bit of time in Portugal. I've also been spending a bit of time the last few weeks in Pittsburgh, where we did a handful of events at Carnegie Mellon University and University of Pittsburgh. They I also got to spend a little bit of time in upstate New York with one of the co-founders of Holochain, Eric Harris Brown. So that was a really wonderful bit of time. And at the moment, I am in Washington, D.C. for some meetings with some organizations here that are interested in making use of Holochain potentially. Alrighty, so we're starting to have some people drift in. We've got about 22 folks, so I will go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to start with our announcements and such. Let me just pull that up. The live stream shift has thrown us off a bit. Let's see. Where is my doc? I've lost the window. There we go. All right, so I'll start with some thank yous as usual. A big thank you to all of our community members, especially our volunteer admins and anybody else that's contributing to the richness of our ecosystem. We're really grateful for those of you who are contributing by creating community content, including materials for understanding the project better, as well as fun GIFs or GIFs, as you may prefer to say it, and memes. We'd also like to give a big shout out to the pioneers in tech and business who've begun to build and create dApps or HAPs on Holochain. Some announcements. Check out the Holoport prototypes sneak peek. So though we're still testing, we've been thrilled with all the hardware tests on multiple units of the Nano, the Holoport, and the Holoport Plus that have already been completed. We'll post a link to our Holo Medium blog posts in the chat. You can find it on the Holochain design blog at medium.com/@Holochain. Also, you might want to check out the Holochain developers update. We had some requests on these AMAs about a month or so ago to start providing some more technical updates as well. And so we're doing that in the form of a Deb Pulse blog post series. We've had 2 of them up so far. The first Dev Pulse covered the release of our Rust developer preview pre-release, basically. So our new Rust refactor, which is a complete rebuild of Holochain. We had finished the first half of that a couple of weeks ago. We're getting close to finishing the second half soon. But that first Dev Pulse article walks through that Rust release. The more recent Dev Pulse article, week 2, as this is going to be a weekly thing, is now up on our Holochain Medium blog, and it is entitled "Containers Make It Easy for Anyone to Use and Build Holochain Apps." basic idea here is that we're pretty excited about containers for many reasons, but especially because they empower anyone to build on Holochain and use Holochain apps. Containers also eliminate the hassle of juggling individual instances and manual management of ports by hosting all apps and consolidating all communications into one set of ports. Basically, you can have a container for anything to run on any platform, on any Holochain app, and have everything communicate peer-to-peer. So the basic idea with containers is if I'm running a bunch of different applications on a device, I'll be able to have a single Holochain container that's managing my various Holochain applications. It provides a whole bunch of advantages so that we don't have every app running separately, needing to sort of, it gives us a way of coordinating access to the outside world. It's still on the user's device, it's under their control, but it becomes a shared space, essentially, not really a shared space, but a coordination mechanism that enables a bunch of advantages in terms of bridging between apps, in terms of sending updates to others when you're running multi-app or meta-app applications, where I may be running 4 different applications in common with this other party as part of some larger sort of unified app experience. The container allows us to be sending those updates all together as opposed to 4 independent streams. So we think there's some really big advantages there. Separately, next up, we had a dev camp, our first dev camp alpha at the end of October. It was a wonderful success. In that app, people started building some simple social applications, some reputation type stuff. We've got another developer camp coming up at the end of this month, and that is going to be focused on agent-centric chat. So we're going to be building some Holochain chat apps. By the end of this dev camp, you would be able to install and run a Holochain app, create a DNA file, which is where all the rules and functions are defined, write tests for Holochain apps, write a Holochain app with agent-centric chat functionality, and you'd become certified as a Holochain developer. Note that all dev camp lessons are delivered online, so you're not having to fly somewhere to do this, with a combination of live video workshops and self-paced content that's made available at midnight, Universal or Greenwich Mean Time each day. So what do you think? Can you make it? Registration is now open. You can go to holo.host/camp to get more details. Some common questions that we get about Dev Camp. Who is the Dev Camp for? Well, Dev Camp is a technically focused learning event, so it's specifically for developers who want to learn how to use Holochain to develop distributed or peer-to-peer applications. A basic understanding of coding, especially in JavaScript and or Rust, is recommended. What are the goals of Dev Camp? Well, Dev Camps have 3 main goals. 1, to help developers learn how to build things in Holochain. 2, to deepen understanding of important functions in Holochain. So you might understand this stuff at an abstract level, but you're really wanting to get your fingers in the dirt and understand the nuances of how these different things work. And then 3, to build our network of like-minded coders. The social aspect is really important, and we think that there's going to be a lot of teams and companies that start to come out of these dev camps thanks to the connections that start getting made. So we encourage you to participate in dev camps as they're available and to connect with one another while you're learning and beyond. Another question that we get is, why isn't this free if Holochain is an open source project? Well, all of our Holochain code is visible on GitHub, and we provide a guide for developers to take a DIY approach to building apps. We're trying to make those resources as good as we can. It's always a work in progress, but our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you to figure it out on your own. And those resources are currently being updated from Go, which was what our original alpha was built in, to Rust, as Holochain has switched from Go to Rust. DevCamp is designed to provide an intensive period of hands-on support with Holo and HoloChain team members to help developers who want extra support to get started or who have detailed technical questions they need assistance with. That requires resources on our part, so we've got to charge for it. If you weren't a backer of the Indiegogo campaign who had purchased a dev camp package and you can't afford $250, we do offer a small number of discounted registrations on a case-by-case basis for dedicated community members with a serious commitment to building a HAP on HoloChain. Please understand that space is limited to ensure the best possible individualized experience. Also, we've got some upcoming meetups. On November 28th in Cyprus, there is a private HoloChain meetup happening, but if you'd like to attend, you can go ahead and email Greg from our team at events@holo.host. Again, if you're in the middle of the Mediterranean and you want to meet other people who are interested in HoloChain, email Greg at events@holo.host. Again, that's events@holo.host. Also, on December 4th, we're going to have another meetup in Barcelona. That community is growing. Super excited to see what's coming out of there. And we should have one of our HoloChain team members, a new team member, but a pretty long time organizer for us. He's been organizing meetups in Brazil, named Julio. Julio's wonderful, and so it'll be a pleasure, I'm sure, to have him getting to hang out with some of the folks in Barcelona and bring all the knowledge that he's gained in helping other people get started building HoloChain apps. Finally, we've got another one on November 30th in Geneva. So there will be a meetup in Geneva on November 30th, Barcelona on December 4th, and Cyprus on November 28th. Just a reminder, meetups are the backbone of the Holo and HoloChain ecosystem. They're where community comes together to explore new ideas, design peer-to-peer projects, and begin to build new possibilities. If you're interested to join one, you can find locations on our chat. There's channels for the various locations. If you want to create a new meetup in your community, whether it's Seoul, Istanbul, Munich, or Barcelona, there's already one there, but if you wanted to create a rival, I suppose, then you can also join chat.holochain.org and create a new channel, a new public channel to invite other people to start organizing. If you'd like to if you'd like to organize a meetup, please email our events team. Again, that's events@holo.host for support. We would really love to help try to make your meetup community as vibrant as possible. And we are connecting meetup organizers with one another, both to help them learn from one another, but also to help them connect their communities to one another so that people who are trying to solve a problem can get in touch with developers who are capable of maybe solving that problem or who may already be working on it. So the cross-pollination on a global scale is one of the things that we're really trying to foster there. All right, it's time to get into some questions. Okay, Tony2214 says, I'm interested in knowing more about website hosting versus DApp or HAP hosting. Are we going to be able to host websites and compete with AWS on specifically that front? Yes, kind of. So you can host websites if those websites have a HoloChain backend. So for instance, hum.earth, H-U-M-M, they're hosting a website right now, not on Holo. They've just set up their own servers. They've got a HoloChain app backend. It's sort of a proof of concept dog fooding project for them. But the basic gist is, yeah, you can serve websites out to others. With Holo, that will be a primary focus, is serving websites to others, but those websites will have a HoloChain backend. That's part of what makes it so that you don't have to have all of the content for what might be a really large application on your device. Because when the query comes in, you speak to the holochain backend and you pull back the relevant pieces from the rest of the community members and then serve those out. Mark asks, if you had a mobile game built in Unity, could you easily put this on holochain? And if so, how would or could micropayments be handled? Would this be with HoloFuel? Well, there's a bunch of answers there. I think we had a blog post go out recently around Fortnite, and because people had asked whether it would be possible to do that. It may not be published yet, but we're going to be working on something along those lines. The longer answer is that you may need to redesign. You may need to redesign the game somewhat, depending on how you've configured it. So I'm not exactly sure of your particular structure, but you'll want to take a look at the agent-centric nature of Holochain and what might need to be changed there in order to make the game operate the way you're wanting it to operate. It depends on the use case. The Fortnite blog post that I mentioned is going to go out actually on Friday, so we'll see that in a couple of days because we have had some questions in this domain before. You had also asked about micropayments, Mark. So on that front, it would be possible you could choose to accept HoloFuel as micropayments. That's not what we designed it for, right? We designed it for use in hosting, but I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility. But you could also create your own in-app game currency. We are helping to create currencies with other folks as well. For food, they're food-backed currencies and things like that. Those are not necessarily going to be running on HoloFuel. They will have their own payment architecture. Now, whether you want to do that, whether that becomes valued in your community or not, you'll have to figure that out for yourself, or whether you'd want to use some other payment option like HoloFuel or US dollars or something else. All right. Another person asked, how are you able to host dev camps before the Rust rewrite is finished? Good question. So what we've been doing is letting people start playing with the Rust code base if that's what they're excited about, but also letting them learn how to build applications in Go, because most of the patterns are the same. There are some changes, but for the most part, the transition from building normal applications to building a Go version of Holochain is a pretty big jump. A Go version of Holochain applications versus a Rust version of Holochain applications is a much smaller jump. So there are some changes that are happening, but we are, people are going to know most of what they need to know, and then it'll be a small tweak as over the next couple of weeks or months, the Rust version gets released and gets matured, and all the tool sets around that become more well developed. What else? A question from Telegram. What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? 42, obviously. For those who aren't familiar, this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Thanks for keeping it fun, folks. What else? Andrew Stover says, with the ability to compile to WebAssembly, what does that mean? That apps will be able to run in browser rather than having to download a client? Yes, in part. So part of the reason for wanting to build in Rust was because by doing a version of Holochain built on Rust, we could support WebAssembly. WebAssembly would enable us to support browser-based applications, so applications that would be able to run just in the browser. That they would also be easier to run on mobile devices. It also gives us the ability to break holochain applications into different configurations. So it could be something where you are consuming information and you're signing things just through a browser on your phone, perhaps. But the other part of the app, the storage and validation functions, you're actually not doing that on your phone in the browser. You're doing that maybe on a different machine at home. So this ability to configure applications in some different ways, we think is pretty important. It's going to enable a lot of uses in the world of IoT, in terms of people being able to decide how they want to structure their use of holochain applications. It probably leads to different business models, et cetera. And it felt important to not have this be just a one-size-fits-all. Holo already creates a bridge to folks who aren't running an application at all, and it makes it so that those people are able to interact with an app through their browser. But WASM makes it so that people who are peers, who are running the application, can choose to actually only run part of the application on a particular device and maybe part of the application elsewhere, whether that's at home or potentially in a cloud, meaning somebody else's machine. That's up to them. But we're wanting to create the diversity of configuration options so that we can satisfy the variety of use cases that are almost certain to emerge. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've got Paul Butler asking, will Indiegogo holoport buyers be the first to run the alpha? I believe so. I don't think, well, we have some people who've asked to be able to develop things for the alpha. And those folks have some access to software development, but I'm not certain what the answer is off the top of my head. My team may be able to give me better answers there. Ben's trying to type in something at the moment. The plan is to have a test time for new users. So we're going to have a bit of a piloting period, essentially. And so there will not be, we will have something akin to a test net, right? So we're going to be playing with transactions and holofuel and all that kind of stuff, without having all the skin in the game right initially. Will Harris Brown says, hi, Matt. First off, Will Harris Brown is a rock star. He is off and doing college. He basically single-handedly made our customer service successful earlier this year during our ICO, before and after, actually. So, hey, Will, good to see you, buddy. I was grateful to get to spend some time with your dad this last week. Will says, Matt, what excites you personally the most about the emerging holoverse these days? I think the thing that excites me the most is that I feel like we're right on the edge of seeing a lot of applications get built. The Rust stuff that's coming out looks like it's going to make building and using holochain applications much easier. And to be totally honest, the Go-based version of Rust was a proof of concept. It was a prototype. We were making use of some libraries that weren't as mature as we would have liked them to be for the peer-to-peer networking. We're now getting to use a much more mature set of libraries. So holochain apps should just work better. The stuff I get excited about really is not just applications starting to be built, but the meta applications stuff. The idea that I may be able to pull multiple applications together or have something that was communicated about me in one context, have me be able to convey that in another context. That enables these software ecosystems that I think are going to transform supply chains and economics more generally is the bigger picture there. But we'll start small. I think that it'll enable much more agile and adaptive software ecosystems. And so that's exciting. So that's probably where I'm at the moment. Just, hey, we're on the edge of what I think is going to be an explosion of people building applications and those applications being really useful in solving problems. So yeah, that's where I'm excited at the moment. Jed Wilcox says, 1, let's say I have an app where users co-sign large numbers of expiring entries on their holochains. Okay? There's like deadlines on these entries. All right. Alice agrees to bake a cake a day for Bob for 7 days, who agrees to clean Alice's house for 9 days. Okay. At the end of the agreement period, could you delete some or all of the data from the holochain entries while retaining data integrity of the chain? So there's a couple of things here. One, once you share that information in public, it's public. So if what you're focused on is preventing others from having access to that information, you may be able to delete your copy, quote unquote, and I'm not even certain that I want to make that claim right now, but you're not going to be able to delete other people's copies. In general, in Holochain, you don't delete content from the DHT. You can mark that content as deleted, but it doesn't actually get removed. If it did, things that were referring to it would stop running, and it causes all kinds of problems. So it's a monotonic DHT. That said, what we are able to do is when there's a version update, the members of that community can decide not to carry all of the ancient history along with them if they don't want to. If the only things that are important or relevant are the state of each user at some time of migration, then they can port that over into the new version. Consider the other stuff to be held in cold storage, where you could always spin up that old app and look at that content and pull it into the new app space if you need to. But you don't have to. You can, if all you cared about was sort of an account balance of some sort, you don't have to have everything from the beginning of history. If the community all agrees, yeah, this is good enough. This moment, these were the balances that we closed out the old app and then shifted to the new app. And so you've kind of created this bridging moment. I think there's going to be a bunch of other patterns that we'll see there as well, but that's one that we've thought about that has to do with how you prevent bloat of essentially the shared storage space. Another question from Jacob was, what about if 3 days in Alice and Bob agree to nullify the agreement? Can they trim or delete the entries on their chains while maintaining data integrity? So what we would do there is not delete those, but modify. So Holochain has the ability to create an entry. It has the ability to modify an entry. It has the ability to quote unquote delete an entry, which really means mark as deleted. There's metadata that then is sitting on that piece of content that says, hey, this is no longer something the author stands behind. All right, they've deleted this. It's still there, but they've stated that this shouldn't be considered valid in terms of the social reality of that community any longer. It's no longer something that party is standing behind. Similarly, a modification would be the same. So, and the way that works is actually not that they change that content. It's that they say, hey, I no longer stand behind this content. I'm modifying it, and you can find the new version over here. So it's actually an indicator that lets other people know this has been altered. And then you would have both Alice and Bob's signature on that if it was something that they had mutually agreed to alter. And considering the kind of use case that you had mapped out, that's probably how you would want it to work. You wouldn't really want one of them to be able to modify the thing by themselves. The rest of the community probably shouldn't recognize that as a modification of the agreement unless both of the parties had agreed to that modification. Okay, that may be a little deep in the weeds for some folks, but thank you for the question. It probably makes some things visible that weren't visible for a lot of people. Najim says, hi, Matthew. How much will the respective holoports likely cost when the Holo store opens? I actually don't know that number off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere in the $500 for, don't quote me on this, but $500 for the holoports and $1,000 for the holoport plus, somewhere in that range. I'm not sure about the Nano, but yeah, I'll leave it there. We don't have a price fully set yet, but the store is in the midst of being built. It should launch soon. Stay tuned. And all caps here, beware of scams, okay? There are all kinds of people wanting to scam members of basically any community affiliated with crypto. But we've seen fake holoport stores show up. We've seen we'll give away hot, just send money to this ETH address things pop up. None of that is real. All of our official stuff is at holo.host. The official holoport store will be at holo.host. If you want updates, you can sign up for updates on the website right now. If you want to be among the first to know when the store goes live, it is being built. It's not up yet. Again, don't quote me on the prices. We haven't set a price yet, but that's around where we were selling them for. We were selling at a slightly discounted rate during the ICO. So that's my assumption of where things will probably land, but we'll have official information out on that soon. Okay, Tony says, what is the best way for community members to constructively promote the project? What else on that front? Well, Tony, the main things I would say is that you can, the main thing I would say is get a deeper understanding of it so that you can explain it to others. That's number one. 2, form a meetup community or join a meetup community and start building things. There are folks out there who aren't builders. That's okay. If you're building a business model, if you're trying to map out, hey, what's the thing we can do with this? That's a way of building something. If you are a developer, definitely try to build something, because as you get your fingers around this, you'll go, oh, wow, that makes these things available. That makes this visible. That makes this possible. And then lastly, I would say, if you aren't interested in hosting a meetup community, but you're a member of some existing community, we would love to support you in giving a talk in some other meetup group, whether that's developers or blockchain enthusiasts or something else. Reach out to events at holo.host, and we will try to support you in sharing about what Holochain is. Being able to give a small 10, 15-minute talk. If you are building something, we would love to see people going and sharing what they've built, whether it's in a Holochain meetup or somewhere else. Let others see what it is that you're doing. Tell them about the difficulties that you had. Tell them about the new things that you realized were possible. but start sharing your actual experience with it. That's probably the main way to help promote. That'll be best. It's really, oh, and then the last piece is, if you are building in some way, try to find ways to help others build, right? Giving a talk is one way to make it visible, but we're really trying to promote a culture of mutual support. And so if you show up in that way, where you're helping other people get unstuck when they're stuck, that'll make learning holochain more fun. It'll make it easier, and it'll probably build a much more vibrant community of holochain enthusiasts in your local area. And it's funny, I was walking on the street back from getting some food earlier this evening, and I bumped into a street sign in somebody's front yard, and it was actually a quote by the sort of stepmom of a friend of mine, and I'll pull it up. So the quote was, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times. So my friend Nora, her dad's first wife was Margaret Mead, and she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And so I thought it was funny to get to bump into that quote. I had forgotten that it was Margaret Mead that said that. But that really feels true. And I think that the holochain community is going to make that really lived. And so I would say go out there and live that, and work on the projects that you are passionate about. Like, make it fun. If you make it fun, you'll do it. You'll build things. You'll have more. You'll be a magnet for other people to want to build things and learn. And I think that's what's really going to make this grow. All right, from Reddit. What school of thought are Art Brock's philosophy categorized as? I simply cannot think of the right category to place Brock's philosophy into, or where his research comes from. Well, there's a handful of sources. And there's a bunch of different layers of Art Brock's philosophy. Nora's dad, so Nora Bateson, is one of the influences for both Arthur and Eric. So Art Brock and Eric Harris Brown, the two co-founders. Gregory Bateson wrote a book called Ecology of Mind. He wrote some other things as well that were profoundly influential. And those really focus on how living systems work and how living systems are communication systems. Art has a bunch of influences, from religious upbringing to currency design stuff. And I know he was pretty heavily influenced by Bernard Lietaire's book on, I'm blanking on the title right now, but it was basically about how money is a construct, right? It was just designed. It's not like gravity. It was something that we invented, and it has specific properties because of its current architecture. And that, I think, really helped open up Art's thinking in terms of, oh, wow, it was designed, and we could design something different. But for most of us who have been part of this project for a long time, the place where we draw a lot of this insight from is very deeply into nature and biological systems, and looking at how biological systems work. And Arthur and Eric, oftentimes when they're trying to solve a problem, will start drawing like a tree and thinking about, okay, well, what are the flows, right? Where are the resources coming in, and how are they being transformed? And they're really looking for inspiration, even though the tree may just be a metaphor there. They're really trying to think through a business model. They're regularly going back to these principles that seem to be the patterns that work in nature. And I'm sure there are a wide variety of influences that I don't know off the top of my head, but those are a handful. What the category is, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's something like biomimetic approach to organization or something like that. And it's thinking of organization and communities and coordination as really being, at the end of the day, all about communication. So there are other folks who've been looking at the world in these ways. A lot of people in the cybernetics movement, which Gregory Bateson was sort of one of the folks who helped found in the late 1940s, those people were looking at this stuff in these ways as well. And so there's a bit of a lineage there. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Mushin says, hi there from Chiang Mai. Hey, Mushin, good to hear from you. My question is, what do we do if as a company we want to officially partner with Holo? I don't remember the email address off the top of my head. I'll ask one of the team members to write that up for me. But we do have a part of our team that focuses on strategic partnerships. We don't do a ton of strategic partnerships, but if it makes sense, we'll do it. We're really more trying to foster an ecosystem. But for the right groups, yep, we would love to partner. And I know from having spoken with you in the past that the stuff that you're working on is pretty interesting. So it looks like the best place to send an email is help@holo.host, and just let them know. So help@holo.host. Let them know that you're looking to talk with somebody about partnerships, and let them know why you think you would want to partner with Holo and why Holo would want to partner with you guys. Cool. Thanks, Mushin. Mushin's been somebody who's worked with some of our team members for years, for longer than I've known them. So good to hear from you. Khalid says, 1, is there any progress in partnerships with large companies and or organizations? Yes. And as I always generally say, we'll announce them when we announce them. I'll leave it at that for right now. 2, how much demand do you forecast for Holo Fuel in the initial weeks of the beta? I have no idea. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot stick. And we will do some alpha stuff, and then it's really going to depend both on not only the state of Holo, but the state of the Holo chain ecosystem. And so we'll see. We are getting the Rust build come out now. I think because it's pretty easy to build on, we will probably have a decent number of applications getting built early on, but that is yet to be seen. So I'm not going to take any guesses there. That feels like stepping into quicksand in some way. How much, Jimmy Warren says, any updated timelines for holoport ship out, mainnet launch, Holo fuel swap, etc.? Not at the moment. So we're talking internally right now about updates to all of these timelines, and we will announce them soon through our official channels. So through Facebook and Twitter and our website, etc. But nothing at the current moment on that front. Han asks, any timeline distance between holoport delivery, software to install for laptop with Linux, software to install for laptop with Windows, software to install for laptop with Mac, etc.? I think that actually is going to be similar to the previous one. We should have some timeline. Updates. I don't want to say clarifications, but some timeline updates soon. And those, I don't know everything that will be included in that, but we're going to try to have as clear a roadmap as we feel confident in. I'll frame it that way, because in this world of tech, things change frequently, but yeah. Clay says, hey Matt, when was the last time you got a chance to go surfing? When was the last time I got a chance to go surfing? I was in Portugal. I had just gotten back from Cairo, Egypt, and I surfed briefly for one day and then very briefly a second day. And then it was stormy and rainy, and then I've been landlocked back here in the US since then. So that was a few weeks ago. It's probably 3 weeks ago. I'm getting flabby. I'm getting, weak. I'm withering over here, folks. And then Ben asked, what does big wave surfing have in common with holochain? Well, yeah, big wave surfing is one of those things where the fun part is actually that decision to go. It's the scary part, but it's also, the fun part, where you're sitting there and the waves it looks like a mountain moving towards you, basically. And you go, I'm going to hold my ground. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to turn, I'm going to paddle and catch this. And everybody around you is like fleeing. They're sprinting for the horizon because everything in your body is like, run, get to safety. And you decide, okay, let's do this. And you start paddling. And then after that, if you wipe out, you're dealing with it. If you make the wave, you're dealing with it. But it's that moment of anticipation that is the exciting part. And it's really that decision to be vulnerable. And so this journey has felt a lot like that. Decision after decision after decision to choose to be vulnerable. I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but part of my journey here was that I lived in my car for a year and a half, so that I would be able to focus just on this work and not have to go do other work. I'm not hoping to repeat that again. But that was a bit of, hey, this feels like the most important thing I can do in my life right now. And I don't know if it's going to work out, but I got to give it a shot. And so, just trying to listen for guidance, I guess, and then commit, sort of throw yourself over the ledge and see how it goes. And for me at the moment, to be totally honest, within Holochain, it's that same experience. I'm finding new growth edges all the time, right? None of us are perfect. And I'm working on all kinds of things around specifically trying to be more vulnerable, trying to be less, I don't know, willing to throw it over the ledge a little bit more. So, there you go. What does it have in common with Holochain as an application framework? I have no idea. I think Holochain is going to be much more useful to the world than big wave surfing. But the experience of trying to bring this thing into the world feels pretty similar, and feels at times very overwhelming, right? Because when you're trying to make a change that feels like it has the potential to be as high leverage as this one might be, it can be really intimidating. It can lead to imposter syndrome, right? Like, who am I to try to do this? Who are we to try to do this? But yeah. All right. Next up, Hero says, will the chain change from hot to fuel to holo fuel automatically? All right. So no. The answer is no. From my understanding, it's not an automatic transition. It's you have the ability to redeem hot for holo fuel. And then it's an action that needs to be taken on the part of the user themselves. Jed Wilcox asks, again, Jed, hey again, is there work to make holochains interoperable with other crypto ecosystems? I'm imagining a currency stored on your holochain ledger, then you put it onto an exchange that enforces global state. I don't know. The short answer is holochain can play with other systems, right? Just like you can have a photo come into a holochain app, or you could have a photo go out. You could export it. I think through APIs, you're going to be able to make calls to other systems. So that enables interoperability. Are we purposely building bridges into existing crypto ecosystems? Not right now, not the team. Although we did have somebody create a proof of concept around something along those lines at the Amsterdam hackathon. And that was an exchange-related project, and it had to do with an action in a holochain application resulting in something on the Ethereum blockchain, if I'm remembering correctly. So yes, will it be possible? Yeah, I think it'll be possible. Is it something that we're working on? Not at the present moment. Yeah, the rest of the question from Jed was kind of deeper into that same thing. So I'm gonna consider that answered. Brett says, hey, from Canada, what do you see your marketing team doing in the near future to promote and bring attention to your bring attention and awareness of your technology to the general public, as not many people are familiar with the blockchain, and this is beyond most people's comprehension? So we have a lot of content coming your way soon. But the more important question is, what would you like to see? What do you want to know? Our marketing content is just the first step, but it's also an invitation for us to go deeper. So you can join our discussions at chat.holochain.net or on Telegram, or just ask questions on Twitter. We are going to work pretty significantly to try to make the holochain content easier to understand, but I actually think the real key thing that's going to be a game changer is that I don't think you're going to have to understand holochain to be able to use holochain. I think a lot of people are going to be able to make use of holochain applications without having to know how holochain applications work. And many people are going to use holochain applications without even knowing they're using it, because they'll be accessing it through a web browser through Holo. From their perspective, it's just a website. So that's one layer, right? So that's sort of end users. But in terms of developers in particular, we are doing developer camps to try to help deepen the skill level and awareness of people who are already excited about building on holochain. We're also rolling out a lot of new content, and I think we're going to be restructuring some of our existing websites and things to make it an easier walkthrough for folks, because it is a brain bender for sure right now. Clay, who had asked the question earlier about surfing, Clay is helping to build our new websites. So thank you, Clay. The work is needed. And yeah, we'll be putting out, we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming actually, whether it's sort of high level things that are useful for helping people who've never heard of us before go, oh, I get what that could be like, to much deeper in the weeds, low level pieces that enable somebody who knows about us and wants to understand actually how does this work, to be able to dive into specific parts and get tutorials or videos or guidance from us and from other resources, so that they can deepen their understanding of how this stuff works and what to do with it. Tony says, how does the team feel about their current progress? Also, will you guys be able to handle large numbers of holoport orders from the community? How do we feel about current progress? I mean, I'm sure I just had this thought of, there's no such thing as global state, right? The team doesn't have a feeling. Individuals have feelings. So I will say, my feeling at present, and from what I've observed of others, I'll sort of try to wrap it up in that way. I think we're really excited. I think that the stuff that's been coming along with the Rust refactor is, it's good. And so that feels. There's problems that we thought we weren't going to be able to solve until much later that feel like, oh, nope, that's getting knocked off the list too right now. And so it feels like things are accelerating pretty quickly. The team is also in a pretty decent place, I think, emotionally. Always room for improvement, and we're trying to work consistently on improving our processes, et cetera. But yeah, my perspective is we're doing pretty well at the moment. In terms of the ability to handle large numbers of holoport orders, thank goodness they aren't manufactured by us. We actually have some really large partners who are doing the manufacturing. So I don't think we're going to have an issue there. No promises on that front, but we had structured our partnerships to be able to handle significant volume should we need to. With that, we are basically running out of time, ladies and gentlemen. So I will do a little bit of recap over some of the announcements from the beginning as well. First off, thank yous to everybody. Whether you're doing you're volunteering as an admin in Telegram or Mattermost, etc., or you're answering questions, or you're asking really good questions, or you're making memes or GIFs or whatever else. Thank you. If you are building applications and sharing out little video tutorials of, I got stuck here and this is how I figured it out, thank you to you folks as well. Announcements. We've got holoport prototypes. We've got a little sneak peek out there. You can check out the Holo Medium blog to see that. We've got hardware tests that have been done on the Nano, the holoport, the holoport Plus. We're thrilled about how those have been going. You can check out all the latest in the Medium blog. That's at medium.com/@holochain. What else? The developers update, the Holochain developers update. DevPulse 2 came out this week. DevPulse 1 came out last week. That first one was really focused on the Rust refactor. This new one is focused on containers, which is basically a way of, on a single device, creating a space within which a bunch of Holochain apps are able to operate, communicate, etc., for a particular user. So you are able, as a user, to be interacting with others, but have that all sort of managed essentially inside of this container. So that's a big jump for us. It's similar to how some of the ways web servers work, actually, in terms of managing traffic and things like that. So there's some pretty well-established patterns that we're borrowing from there. We are doing DevCamp Alpha version 2, or number 2, basically, at the end of this month. So at the end of November, DevCamp Alpha. This one is going to be focused on building a user-centric or agent-centric chat application. Now, that said, you're going to be learning how to build Holochain apps in general, but the sample application that we'll be practicing building is a agent-centric chat app. Again, all dev camps are delivered online. They are open. That one is open for registration now at holo.host/camp. The cost is $250. It's for developers, people who have at least a basic understanding of coding, especially JavaScript and/or Rust is recommended. The goals of DevCamp are to help developers learn how to build things, to deepen their understanding of important functions in Holochain, and to build our network of like-minded coders. And again, for those of you who can't afford $250, and there are areas of this world where $250 is not much money, and there are areas of this world where $250 is a giant amount of money. But for those of you who are really committed to building a holochain app, reach out to us. Hit us up at help@holo.host and let us know about what you're wanting to create, why you're wanting to create it, and we can consider a small number of discounted registrations. Do recognize that space is limited in these dev camps. We are wanting to have a really solid experience for each participant, but you can apply now online. Meetups at the end of this month and early next month. We've got one in Cyprus on November 28th, another in Barcelona on December 4th, and one in Geneva on November 30th. I will also be giving a talk in San Francisco at Node SF on November 20th. And there's a possibility I'll be doing another talk in San Francisco with a super secret guest on the 28th, but we'll keep our fingers crossed and see if that one actually emerges. If you're interested in joining a meetup, seeing if there's one in your local city, you can go onto our Mattermost at chat.holochain.org, and you can see if there's a location in your city, a meetup group already formed. If there isn't, you can create one. And if you'd like support in any of that, we would love to support you. Please email our events team at events@holo.host. All right, everybody, that's it for the AMA number 19 from Washington, D.C. this time. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to our next chance to get to chat.